This is Michael Scott Hollash with a Reform Report, and today I have a new interview in our Voices from La Cosa Nostra series with former Philadelphia crime family mobster Bobby Luisi. Bobby was a made member as well as street boss for the family's Massachusetts faction. This interview begins season 6 of the Reform Report, which I could not have done without you guys. So I want to thank each and every one of our subscribers who continue to tune in and chime in, as well as a special thanks to our PayPal and Patreon supporters: Anthony Sparacino, James Francis, Gianna Capriatto, Dave, James IFC, and MAGA Kate. I super appreciate you guys for continuing to assist me bringing content to the channel and continuing. We have a lot of things that we are working on for this year that I'm super excited about. So, for each of you who are new here, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you will be notified when any new segment or interview posts. So without further ado, here is my interview with Bobby Luisi. All right, so I am here with Bobby Luisi, who was a former made member of the Philadelphia crime family, but moreover, he was a captain and a street boss. So this is a pretty exciting interview for me because, like I told you, Bobby, I've interviewed a couple dozen street guys from about 8 different families, but prior to yourself, I've only interviewed 2 former made members. You know, kind of starting at the beginning, were you born and raised in Philadelphia?
No, I was born and raised in Boston. I was born in Little Italy in Boston, in the North End. I went down to Philly years later.
Okay, very interesting. So how did you, as far as your family background, were there anyone in your family prior to yourself that ever had any, direct connections with organized crime?
Yeah, my father was in the life.
Okay.
Since probably his early 20s, and maybe even teens, I don't know. And I grew up around the Petriarca family.
Right.
Raymond Petriarca took the family over, I think, in the 50s. Right. And I was around Jerry Angiulo, his underboss, who was actually the boss of Boston. He ran Boston for Raymond. I grew up around him in the North End. The North End is the Italian section of Boston, Little Italy, and that was mob headquarters for years, for 30 years.
Raymond Patriarca was one of the bosses of that all met at Appalachian in New York, the conference.
He was there. He
right.
was there.
Absolutely.
Raymond Patriarca was on the commission. He was a big man, Raymond. He was really tuned in with the Genovese family and the other families in New York. He was well respected. Raymond was a man's man. He was a gangster, and there's no doubt about that.
Right.
I grew up around all his people, the May guys in his family, Capo, soldiers. They were in the neighborhood as I grew up. I grew up in the North End in East Boston also, which was a heavily Italian community there too, and Irish. And my whole life, I was 11 years old when I went to work for Ronnie Romanowski. Ronnie Rome, he ran Rome Vending, which is the vending company for the Angiulo family.
Okay.
And I started there at 11 years old. So I've been around this my whole life.
So, I mean, it's very interesting that, obviously being around the Patriarca family, your father having his feet wet with that family and your contacts and your connections, obviously with, individuals who were part of the upper echelon of the family, that, that was a path that you didn't take with them, that you ultimately, got your feet in the door with Philadelphia.
Well, I'll tell you the story. If you want to hear it, Mike, I'll tell you, Michael.
Okay.
We had a war up here in the 90s.
Okay.
I was with the Patriarchas. I was proposed with their family. And what happened in 1985, I believe Raymond Sr. passed away.
Okay.
Left the family to his son, which didn't work out too well. And from that point on, there was a lot of conflict between Boston and Rhode Island. And the family was in a little turmoil. By the 90s, the capos in Boston, like Joe Russo and these other capos that were up there that I grew up with, made guys, they were all gone. The feds picked most of them up. It started the decline of the Patriarca family.
Right.
And there were remnants left, and we were there. And Frankie Salemi ended up becoming the boss of the Patriarca family. They tried to assassinate him in 1989 at a IHOP in Route 1 in Saugus, and he survived it, and he became the boss of the family. And we were with that faction for a little while, myself, my family, and my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a murder here, and I think it was 93, that really escalated the war here.
Okay.
Of Richie Devlin. He was a friend, a good guy, not a really close friend of mine, but the people that I was around. And so the war escalated. There were 5 different factions up there. And it was the late 90s, and the feds picked up 3 of the factions that were against us. And we were left here, the Salemi faction, and I started having a falling out with them. I didn't like the way things were going. I had a powerful crew up here. You know, I wasn't really going to listen to them, you know. I decided to reach out, and I reached out to New York and Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the mid-'90s, later '90s, and that's how I hooked up with Philadelphia.
Right. Now, at that point, did you have some direct contacts with New York and Philly?
Yes, I did.
Okay, right. So that kind of makes it kind of easy too, because they know, of you, what your capabilities are, and that you're a stand-up guy. So it's kind of easier for them to make that determination if they want to bring you into the fold or whatnot.
Exactly.
Did they have to kind of have a sit down to determine if they're gonna, plant their flag with you? And
well, originally I went down and I met Ralph Natali. At that time, Joey had him as the head of the family. Right. And make no mistake, Joey was always the boss of the family. But Ralph was there. He was up front. He was Joey's guy. And I met Ralph first through mutual friends. And from Ralph, I met Giorgio Regesi, and then I met Joey. And I met the guys down in Philly.
Right.
And then I started traveling back and forth. And, there were several meetings. There was a lot of talk over this. And I got proposed in that family. And after a short time, I got my button, and then I became a captain in the family. Right. And at that point, they started straining out my crew in Boston. I made an agreement with Joey that I was going to stay with the family for 2 years. But Joey himself said this. And then I could break off and just start my own family in Boston. And that was the plan.
Right. So when you were made, you were made in the Philadelphia family. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you mind kind of giving, like the scenario of how that took place, like as far as like the induction ceremony? I mean, you don't have to necessarily rattle off names that you're uncomfortable with, but as far as the actual, how it went down?
Listen, Michael, I still have a belief in that. I don't think that should be discussed.
Right.
That's something in the family that's done that I don't think should be talked outside of the family.
Right.
I mean, I understand I'm doing a lot of talking, and I did my thing, but I still have some belief in that.
That's pretty commendable, actually. And like I said, there's 2 other gentlemen I talked to. Their ceremonies were different, a little bit different than from each other, but obviously their oath at the end of the day, that was pretty much, not to make it sound generic, but the same scripted oath that they took.
Well, basically they all are, because we all come from one thing. You have to realize that.
Right.
Even though there's different families and different factions all over the country, we're still all one. Yes, right. Every ceremony and every family is a little different. Everybody does it a little different way. Basically, it's the same ceremony.
Well, you guys are like a large fraternal organization, and each family is just a chapter of that organization. I mean, that's how I look at it, you know?
Well, that's a way to look at it.
Right.
That's a good way to look at it. It's like being a member of the Moose Club, and wherever you go in the country, you're a member. Italian American Club. Wherever you
Absolutely.
go in the country, you're a member. And that's the same thing with our thing.
Right. Like an ethnic, fraternal organization. When you were in Boston, or you were in Boston most of the time, did you ever have any dealings with Whitey Bulger's organization?
Well, at one point they took over the Somerville gang, which was the old Winter Hill gang.
Right.
They were just remnants, the guys that were left over.
Mhm.
When I was coming up, Whitey wasn't one of us, so I never really interacted with him. Thank God I didn't.
Right.
He didn't mean anything to me.
Right.
A large part of my crew was Irish.
Mhm.
I grew up with all Irish guys. I married an Irish girl, Donovan, beautiful girl, my first wife, and I grew up with Irish people. To me, they were strong, they were good people, but that Whitey Bulger faction, I didn't want anything to do with, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, because there were, obviously his brother was a corrupt, what was he, like a senator, like a state senator or something? And then obviously he, corrupted some FBI people. I mean, when you start messing with the government and corrupting government, then, your days are numbered. You're going to only get away with it for so long. And once, that's not going to last forever. And the hammer is going to come down,
But Whitey had a pretty good run. And, Whitey hurt a lot of people, most of the Italians.
Right.
And, what he did is, was terrible. On the streets, it was always talked about. He was always suspect, but I never knew for sure. But when I was coming up, he was more of my father's generation.
Right.
When I was coming up in the 90s, they all took off anyway. They went on the lam. Him, Frankie Salemi. They caught Stevie Flemmi. They make him to be some kind of big boss. I mean, and he was in South Boston. He had his crew, whatever he was doing. But compared to us, he had to answer. He had to answer to the Italians. And I know he didn't like that, but that's how it was.
Well, and too, the Patriarchas had the numbers. I mean, to go to war with the Patriarcha family, he probably didn't have the strength and muscle to ever be able to do that,
No. That's
Right.
why he did it the other way.
Right.
With the FBI. Now, don't get me wrong. Whitey Bulger, Stevie Flemmi, that crew, that was a bad crew. They killed a lot of people. Whitey Bulger himself was a bad guy. So, I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from them or that crew. But facts are facts. And we know what they did,
Yeah, and it's a really small world in a way because, our mutual friend Anthony Arulata, it ended up being one of his former crew guys that actually killed Whitey in prison. It's
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, it's a small world. I've listened to your interview on the Johnny and Gene show, and then I also listened to part of your interview with Anthony on your channel, which, by the way, I'm going to put a link to your channel in the description of this interview. For you guys listening, you definitely need to check out Bobby's channel. He just got it started up, and you're actually at 1,000 subscribers already? I think I saw that.
Yeah, the Bobby Luisi show. Yeah, I got 1,000 subscribers.
That is awesome.
I've probably got like 40,000 views at this point, and the show's picking up,
So I think it'll be a good tool for you to be able to help a lot of people, which I know that you do, the work that you do now. But with Anthony, did you have any interactions with him on the street? Did y'all know each other on the street?
Oh, yeah. I see. What I was doing was planting flags everywhere, from Maine all the way down into Connecticut. I had a crew down there. And I was around the Springfield area. And, yeah, I used to go down and visit Anthony all the time, actually.
Okay.
Anthony was a great kid. I actually wanted to propose him in my family because he was on the shelf there for a little while with the Genovese family. And I was there in Bruno's time, and I used to go down there, and Al wasn't too crazy about me going down there, to be honest with you. I really didn't get along with Bruno. And he knows I was nipping around on there, wanting to see what was going on. You know, to me, that's Massachusetts, and I had a right to it, you know.
Right.
I would never bother the Genovese family, never, or another May guy. But, you know, if my guys were around down there, they were going to stop picking, you know.
So just to clarify, I mean, you were predominantly in Eastern Mass, and Anthony was Western Mass. That's Springfield was Western Mass, and then up into Connecticut. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was based out of Boston. I was on North End.
Right. Yeah, Anthony has an amazing story too, and what a great guy. You know, just
he is.
Such a nice guy. It's kind of interesting how people can evolve and progress out of that mindset. I mean, obviously, you know, you are who you are, so you're always a capable individual of what you're capable of doing, but it's interesting to me, the human nature, how people can progress, you know. As you were operating, how did things start kind of closing in on you to where, you know, I know with, you know, listening to one of your interviews, I don't want to kind of reiterate it in your words. I'll let you lay it out. But like, how did you kind of come to the conclusion that, you know, that this thing was kind of a dead end and you wanted to kind of start, you know, getting away from it? Like, was there any point?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. And it was March of 1998. And I had some type of a spiritual encounter. And the encounter I had wasn't good, you know, and it opened my eyes to some things. And, you know, that night that happened, you know, I was a die-hard gangster. I mean, I believed in everything that we were doing. But that night showed me that Christ did exist, and there was a devil, you know. And it's hard to come off of that, you know. I was still a boss on the street. But now I come to a new, what do they call it in the paper, an epiphany.
An epiphany, yes.
An enlightening, or whatever they want to call it. But I was 8 hours in a room with this demonic thing. You know, I seen men, heads of men that I killed, and I seen different things, and I started to see my evil and how evil I actually was, because I didn't realize how bad of a person I was. I thought I was a good guy, but, you know, really I wasn't. And so that opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I started searching after that. Yeah, but what was that, about 15 months before I got arrested, I started going back to church, and I started seeking a little, and I wanted answers to what happened to me, and why did this happen to me? And so, you know, that right there at that point, it started to change me, it started to turn me. I wasn't as willing to do the things that I was going to do before, or that I had done before, or things that were expected to be done after that.
Right.
If you can understand what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I do know what you're saying. You know, is that something that becomes kind of like a conflict of interest in the lifestyle that you were operating in?
Oh, of course I was. I mean, listen, we were the epitome of evil. We're selling drugs, we're murdering, we're extortionists. We did everything.
Right.
And everything was okay. That was our life. That's what we believed in. We believed that lie. You understand? We grew up in that.
Right.
You know, it's not that we didn't know better. It was a way to make money. You know, it was a way to fame, a lot of different things, you know.
Right.
I love being Bobby Luisi. I love being that guy, you know, until that night, until I actually saw what I saw. Because, you know, you hit a point. I don't want to say that you stop believing in God, but that I got to live my life the way I have to live it, and God's got no part of it. Like I mean, so you move on in that way, and then whatever you do, whatever we seem to do in our lives, you know, we could, how could I say it? If we decide to sell drugs, we could justify that. If we kill somebody, we could justify that. There was a reason. We always try to justify our actions, right, not realizing the results of them. This thing woke me up to everything, you know, but now still, the next day when I went out, I still had to do my business.
Absolutely.
I still had people that wanted to hurt me and people that I was supposed to hurt. You know, it just doesn't shut off. I go knock on the door and say, hey, listen, I'm a Christian now. I'm not coming to work today. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You know,
Well, and not only that, it's like in that lifestyle, if you let your guard down, that's a life or death matter for you, or for the guys
absolutely.
directly around you that rely on you to have their back. So that's a really kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, no one even really knew I was going to church every Sunday. My bodyguard was coming to church with me.
Hmm.
He ended up getting saved. God bless. Speaking in tongues. Tommy's gone now, so I could talk about him. Tommy Caruso. He
Right.
passed away while I was in prison. Good guy, tough guy, capable of doing anything. And he came to church, to my mother's church, and before you know it, he was saved. Tommy wanted out, and I had to let him out. There was nothing I could do at the time. I can't fight God. Didn't want to. So towards the end, Tommy was disappearing more and more. But I
Right.
knew why. I didn't want to explain to the guys why. What am I going to tell them? So he got more of a pass to do what he wanted to do. He started living his life right.
Right.
He went to work, and he was following Christ. God bless him.
So, I mean, at what point did you finally walk away from the life? Like, what was that point?
Well, I didn't walk away from the life. I got picked up in
Right.
'99. And when I got picked up, it was kind of a relief. I felt like a yoke came off my shoulders. While they cuffed me and were putting me in the car, I just had a smile on my face, because I'm fighting inside. It's an internal fight with this good and bad. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I didn't know how to get out of it.
Hmm.
And they put the cuffs on me, and it kind of solved that problem to a point,
And now, what did they pick you up on? What was the charge that they picked you up on?
It was cocaine distribution.
Okay. So it was like,
Yeah.
was it like a DEA investigation or something?
Well, it was the FBI. We were being investigated for everything, but
Right.
they
Racketeering.
wanted to
Right.
wrap us up, so all they had on me was the cocaine. One of the capos in the Philly family, Ronnie Previty, was an informant, and he had me sitting down with an FBI agent. On the street, nobody could come near me and talk to me. But because of Joey putting us together and him making Ronnie a capo, Ronnie was able to come and talk to me.
So,
You know?
did they have you on like a wiretap?
Oh, they had me on video, wire, everything.
Wow. Yeah, they're
There
totally.
was no way out from me. But see, that wasn't that bad. I was only faced at 10 to 12 on that case.
Hmm.
And I was all prepared to do my time. That was, that's part of this life. But then I was in there with an ex-partner, and he was in there for something else. And he came up to me, he said, Bobby, talk to your attorney because we heard that there's murder indictments coming down. I said, really? So I got in touch with my lawyer. And luckily in his office, Marty Bedreau was in there. He was in AUSA in the Boston courthouse up there, federal courthouse. And Marty came and talked to me. He said, Bobby, listen, all your friends are ratting on you. He says, they have you cold on a murder. And they're all talking about it up there. And he said, listen, I could get you this 10 to 12, but it doesn't look like you're going to get back out. He
Right.
said, they all lined up against you. I said, really? He said, yep. And, things went on from there.
And the situation, with most of the time with the government, once they kind of compromise or they harness an asset, is there a time limit that they have kind of like their claws in you to try, to be able to utilize you in, the way they see fit? How long before they basically leave you alone?
Well, I never finished the negotiations with the government. I had a falling out with them.
Oh, okay. Right.
I didn't want to be an informant. I don't even know why I talked to them when I
Right.
did. And Joey Molino's case was coming up in Philadelphia with all my friends.
Right.
And negotiations started falling apart with them.
Hmm.
You could see, and everybody could look up my court records, I went to trial twice. I went and fought the government. I never helped them. I did make a mistake. I talked a little. I shouldn't have did that. But my concern was the murders in Boston. Nothing to do with Philadelphia. I couldn't see that old crew that I was with all walking away, and I was going to do life in prison.
Right.
You know, I had enough of it at that point. Everybody got pinched. They're all ratting on me. That's all it was about at the end. Who was going to rat on me next?
Right.
So
Well,
by me talking, I stopped that for everybody. And they had to do their time. I got these.
especially with where you were at in life, because it's like you were already, I mean, I'm not saying that you weren't operating and still doing, nefarious activities or whatever, but you were already analyzing things differently, and it was almost like your past coming back to haunt you through, these guys who were totally undercutting you and throwing you under the bus.
Exactly.
So, I mean, obviously the federal government probably were salivating to try to get you to testify against Merlino, I'm sure.
They were. They
Yeah,
were.
absolutely.
But, listen, today, we're not friends anymore. I mean, that's obvious, I have nothing to do with the mob. They have nothing to do with me.
Right.
But for me to sit across from them in a courtroom and testify on them, I couldn't do that. So when I started fighting the government, with my superseding indictment, there was murders and everything, and I had to take the chance that I might be going away for life anyway, but I wanted to go down more as a man than sitting across from my friends and telling on them.
Yeah, it makes you no different than the guys that were doing that to you,
Exactly.
Right.
And praise God, the way things worked out, I didn't testify against anybody. So things worked out for me. I did my time. And then right before I was ready to get out, and this is important why I'm saying this, because it's going to be on my next show, they came to me over the Garden Art Museum robbery in 1990. At that time, I think it was about 92, 93, I hooked up with Bobby Luisi.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the top suspect for that robbery.
Right. It was like a substantial value of art that was taken, right?
They said about $500 million worth
Right.
of art. It's the biggest art heist ever pulled off in the world, and it was done by Boston gangsters.
Unbelievable.
Now, I was privy to things after the fact, and I didn't know that much about it. But the feds called me about it, asked me about it, and they came and talked to me about it. Now, Bobby Luisi had passed away, so I wasn't worried about talking about what he told me.
Right.
About the art robbery. And what happened after that is the feds came to me. They found Rico Ponzo somewhere in Ohio. And Rico was in one of the factions that I was against, one of my enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to me and they said, we're subpoenaing you. This right before I got out. You're going to be subpoenaed to his trial. I said, well, I never committed a crime with Rico, and there's nothing that I could tell you.
Right.
They said, well, we want you to tell us about, you were the boss up there at that time, and we want you to tell us about the structure of organized crime up in Boston at that time,
Right.
And I didn't want to do that, but I wasn't going to go have them subpoena me and plead the fifth for this Rico Ponzo,
Right.
which was a nobody.
Right. He wasn't a friend of yours, exactly.
Not at all.
Actually an enemy.
He was an enemy, and I said it on the stand. I was looking to kill him.
Right.
And he knew that. Me and Rico were not friends.
Right.
That's no excuse to tell on anybody, but they subpoenaed 64 people to that trial, several May guys, and everybody talked. Okay, so I wasn't the only one. I never would testify against a May guy or one of my friends. I just wouldn't do it, Michael.
Right.
That's not me. I'm not made up like that. You're in there. I was pissed off in the beginning with these Boston guys that were ratting on me. I didn't know how to get back at them. That's the only way I knew how to get back at them. Look what it would have did to the Philly guys if I testified.
Well, and two, I mean, like you said, just because you're not in the life anymore, the fact that, like what you pointed out a little while ago about talking about your induction, I mean, the whole thing, it's a part of you, and it's a part of your makeup. I mean, from how you were raised with your father being involved, it's almost like it's in your blood. And just because you're not an active member of that organization anymore, it'll always be a part of you.
Let me say this to you, Mike. I went to prison. I got a degree in theology.
Oh,
I wrote a
awesome.
book.
Very cool.
I have a book on Amazon, God's Plans Revealed, by Robert C. Luisi Jr. And I was a pastor for a short time. And I got to tell you the truth. I'm back in Boston, and the toughest thing for me in life is to be a civilian.
Right.
It's really hard for me. Even with Christ inside of me, it's really hard. Because like you said, I grew up. This was my way of life. I don't like disrespect. I don't disrespect people. It's just hard for me to be a civilian every day, if you can understand that.
Yeah, no, I can, because it's like you have to reprogram everything about how you handle things. I mean, obviously in your former line of work, the money was easy,
Yeah.
and it's hard when you deal with real life issues, and it's like, damn, you probably the Bobby Luisi back then never would have fathomed, like, damn, I need to think about how I'm going to pay the mortgage, or I got the electric bill. I mean, that's probably chump change.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that for sure. As far as that art heist, did they ever solve that case? That was never solved, right?
No, that was never solved. That was never solved.
That is it's unbelievable.
I still have a nice show coming up with one of the experts about that. That'll be the next show.
Oh, cool. I'll have to tune into
The
that.
little involvement I had, and we'll go over all the characters, you know.
Yeah, I'll definitely look forward to that. And for my listeners listening to this interview, you guys need to definitely go and subscribe to Bobby's show, and also hit the notification bell, so as his new shows hit, you guys will be notified on that. All right, Bobby, I think we got everything covered. I really do appreciate you sitting down. I really do, Bobby.
Well, listen, I enjoyed it tonight, Michael. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. And definitely keep me in the loop with stuff that you have going on so I can promote it on upcoming shows as well. And
I will.
All right, buddy. I'll be in touch soon.
All right. Thank you, man.